Hey guys, what's up? My name is Greg. Welcome back to another video. I know it's been way too long. I'm really hoping to not take like another 1,000-year hiatus. Life just got really busy on me. But enough about that. We are just over 1 week removed from probably the best Nintendo Direct ever. Nintendo finally unveiled their beautiful new console, the Nintendo Switch 2. We finally got an in-depth look at it, and I think it kind of blew a lot of our expectations out of the water. Not only is this thing a little bit more powerful than we thought it was, it's like the dream console. It's virtually everything we could have wanted in a successor to the Nintendo Switch. It's got the exact same form factor, except there's a lot more going on underneath the hood. It's a little bit more beefy and way more capable than the Nintendo Switch 1 was. I think that's what the entire internet has wanted for like the last 3 or 4 years now. On top of that, they finally dove deep into their brand new launch title, Mario Kart World, and this game looks absolutely unbelievable. There's a gigantic, gorgeous open world with all interconnected levels and a new free roam mode that lets you freely travel the entire world looking for secrets, unlocking skins. You can play as the Moo Moo Meadows cow, which made literally everybody lose their minds, including me. You can play as a dolphin riding a dolphin, you could play as a crab, you can play as anybody. The third-party support looks so robust. There's so many high-quality titles coming to this thing that seem to run really well. There's a brand new exclusive From Software game coming that looked like Castlevania. There's a brand new game in the Kirby Air Ride series for the first time in like 20 plus years. And finally, I'm biased. This was my pipe dream for the entire thing. I did not think it would happen. I prayed to the Nintendo gods that there could somehow be a new 3D Donkey Kong game, kind of akin to Donkey Kong 64. And we got exactly that. We got a brand new Donkey Kong 3D platformer called Donkey Kong Bonanza. You're taking on these big 3D biomes and you can destroy absolutely everything in your way. This game looks incredible. I truly cannot wait for this. This was my pipe dream come true. On top of that, we obviously have Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. We have Nintendo Switch 2 edition games. Literally anything you could have wanted, it was here in this Direct, and everything was right with the world. We were all on cloud 9 for like 14 seconds. And then the price got revealed. Very different from the Nintendo Switch 1, the console will launch at a $450 price point. And even worse, that shiny new beautiful Mario Kart game is launching at $80. And so the entire internet has been on fire ever since. The discourse has gotten really toxic. Are the games $90? Is the system going to cost $700 because of tariffs? So I just wanted to come on here and just discuss it. Like, can we just be like level-headed and real? Like, can we just be real about this for like 5 minutes? But anyway, let's start with the whole $450 price point of the console. So I think that the $450 price tag is more than realistic, personally. I hope you can put your pitchforks down if you disagree, but I think that this is more than realistic. I paid $350 for my Nintendo Switch 1 OLED. The original Nintendo Switch launched at a $300 price tag. This is, for all intents and purposes, the exact same console, but it has a, admittedly, really gorgeous OLED screen, which justifies the additional $50. Now, if you take a look at what the Switch 1 is capable of and clearly contrast that with the visuals and performance of the Switch 2, I mean, I feel like that alone is already very clearly defining that additional $100 difference between Switch 1 OLED and the Nintendo Switch 2. And on top of that, apparently a really comparable screen that looks very much like the OLED due to the Nintendo Switch 2's HDR. Now, I personally didn't get to try the hands-on. I'm a loser. I wasn't picked by Nintendo. But I have heard from many people who have went and experienced it that the screen is gorgeous. For those that are really unhappy with the $450 price tag, I do feel like this is a bit of a case of Nintendo fans talking out of both sides of their mouth. The entire internet, like every Switch user who was ready for a Switch 2, wanted the same console with better performance. And we got that, and now suddenly it's too expensive. I mean, for one, we're 4K and 60 frames per second. Ever terms that you would imagine being said in the same sentence as a Switch? I certainly didn't. So again, going back to the whole title of like being for real, how is this thing supposed to be a $350 console? It just doesn't make sense. Just because the Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out, it doesn't mean that they're going to suddenly stop selling the Nintendo Switch 1. So how would you ever sell on the same shelf a Nintendo Switch 2, which is multiple times more capable than a Nintendo Switch 1, at a similar or even same price point? And if you just think about it logically, like, how else are they going to get this peak performance? They have to put better components into the console. And these better components cost more money, which is why the console winds up costing more money. I've seen that the Switch 2 is very comparable in power to the PlayStation 4. Now, the PlayStation 4 launched at a $400 price tag, obviously Switch 2, $450. I'm sure if I were to ask any adopter or any purchaser of the PlayStation 4 if for $50 more they could keep that console in a handheld form that they could take on a train, on a plane, in a car ride, on the toilet, and play any of their games anywhere they want, for an additional $50, I don't even think that would be a question. I think Nintendo has the reputation of being the family-friendly, affordable, accessible developer, and so the price point of it being a little bit more than we expected is being amplified in a way. And Nintendo, again, was like the laughingstock of the internet for years and years, and they finally closed the gap between themselves and Sony and Xbox, graphically and performance-wise. I don't know what they're supposed to do, because they can't make a console that's more powerful but then charge more for it. I don't think they could please anybody here. But even more than that, I think fans are upset about the $80 price tag of Mario Kart World. And I understand. Look, we live in a world where you go to the grocery store and you get eggs, bread, and milk, and your receipt is $241. I mean, it's just the truth. But I think that we need to give the game a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. New AAA experiences are $70. I mean, this is nothing new. I'm pretty sure all of the new AAA games on Sony and Xbox have been at this price tag, and Nintendo dipped their feet into the water with Tears of the Kingdom launching at $70 as well. Now, is $80 for their brand new launch title a bridge too far? I mean, that remains to be seen. I think we have to check out that Nintendo Direct coming next week. Is it next week? The 17th of April, discussing Mario Kart World. And who knows, there might be some hidden feature or DLC pack, further support Battle Pass, something that further justifies that additional $10 price. Even still, Nintendo has kind of announced that they've adopted this variable pricing strategy. And we've already seen that, like I said, with Tears of the Kingdom. Other games have launched at 50, 60, 40, just depending on the size of the experience. We're seeing that even further with Donkey Kong Bonanza. That's another $70 game. So it seems like the $80 price tag is going to be very exclusive to games that Nintendo deems worthy of that. And I will say, Mario Kart is like one of those evergreen titles that it kind of just like never gets old. I mean, we've been playing the same Mario Kart since 2014. Yeah, they added new tracks to it, but it's the same game for over a decade. Mario Kart is one of those games where every time you have friends and family over, you bust out Mario Kart, you bust out some snacks, and you have a great time on a Friday night. It's the type of game that you could easily sink hundreds and hundreds of hours into just playing it with friends alone, not even including single-player content or just playing online with randoms. So for them, that $80 price tag might justify the amount of hours you're getting out of the experience. They did also announce the tech demo Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and that game is launching at $9.99. And come on, that should have been free. That should have been a pack-in title. Nope, I don't want to hear it. If we got Astro's Playroom for free on the PS5, there is no reason we should be paying $10 to run around a virtual Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, if I really wanted, I could bust out the Nintendo Switch 2 manual when I get my hands on it and read that, and I'd probably be getting a similar experience. I mean, the demos are pretty cool, though, I gotta be honest. And I think Nintendo has earned this sort of like greedy moniker more so with the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. So these are almost like the PS5 upgrades that they offered on PS4 games, which is just, increasing the performance, better resolution, better frame rates. But they're charging for it. There are also free ones, but the ones that they decided to showcase in the Nintendo Direct were paid. And it's since been announced that these range from really $10 to $20. But you'll see people all over the internet saying, oh my God, I gotta pay $80 to play the Switch 2 Tears of the Kingdom and blah, blah, blah. It's not true. It's not true. Yes, if you buy a brand new Switch 2 copy of Tears of the Kingdom, you're essentially paying the $70 price tag of the new game because it's still for sale for Switch 1 at $70, and then you're paying the $10 upgrade to get it to run beautiful and all that additional Zelda Notes content that they discussed in the Direct. Now, if someone's not viewing it with that context, they might view it as, how is Nintendo charging $80 for a few-year-old game being ported to Nintendo Switch 2? The only one I feel a tad mixed on regarding the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition pricing is Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus, I don't even remember what, Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Star-Crossed World. That's it. Now for me, that's a $60 game that they're now charging $80 for. So again, if it's $60 but then $10 to get the upgrade, they did add this new Star-Crossed World campaign, but based on what they showed, I don't know how big that is. Like, is that going to be worth another $10? If it gives me another, 5-10 hours of gameplay with a game that I adored, I loved Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that might justify that expense. And I will say, for a multi-billion-dollar company, they did a really poor job of communicating how these Switch 2 upgrades are going to work. Like, if I want the performance boost, but I don't want the extra content, do I still have to buy the whole performance pack? Or, you know, by putting it in the Switch 2, will it automatically run better, but then I won't get the new content? And I don't recall them touching on this in the Direct at all, but at least the Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom upgrades are actually included for free if you're a Nintendo Switch Online Plus member. So who knows how many of these are going to be free of charge that we're all panicking about the price of. And as of yesterday, I think the tariffs have been paused to most other countries. I think there is still a 10%. I don't know. I'm not a politician, okay? But they're paused for 90 days, so that is good news. Nintendo should stock up on all of the Switch 2 units that they can, and hopefully it won't affect the launch price of the console. I guess we'll have to see post-launch if there are crazy tariffs and Nintendo has to protect themselves by raising the price. That would absolutely suck. But ultimately, I understand, and people want to get mad about this, but I understand. The tariffs are outside of Nintendo's control. Let's say a 30% tariff comes into place. Are they to then accept that 30% increase, not pass that off to consumers just so we're happy about it? Ultimately, Nintendo is a business. For all that they do to create wonder and joy and happiness in our lives, they are a company, they're a business. They're not in the business of making friends, they're in the business of making money. If it doesn't make sense to their shareholders or their investors, it probably doesn't make sense to do it. It's all gonna be wait and see, touch and go for a while. Either way, I just wanted to hop on here, try to do my best to cool the temperature at all, and just discuss this with a level head. And again, in a world where everything is expensive and it's hard enough to live, it gets harder and harder to justify, oh, an extra $10 here, an extra $100 here. But I don't think all of us are being realistic about it. Thank you guys for checking this video out. So if you guys come in with a different perspective, hopefully we can have a productive conversation in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate you subscribing and coming along for the ride. I should be having all kinds more Nintendo Switch coverage moving forward. Thank you guys so much again. I apologize for my absence. If you do want to check out the video that almost broke me, you can click here. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Be good. Bye-bye.